Welcome, everyone. I am Nicola Mosca, the Green Player, and I'm here from Milan Reply K1 for a new brand new episode of On the Green. I'm a little bit excited. It's a first time for me on the stage. Usually, On the Green is a series of episodes that are usually carried out in a completely different way. Usually, I'm in a streaming room, the battle station, and I have a guest connected via streaming. Today, however, I'm on the stage, and there's also a great audience with me. So thank you for being here, and thank you for who is watching this live show in streaming. Despite the differences, I would like to emphasize that this live, like all the others, is focused on many of the passion that I have. But of course, there's a common thread on all the passion that I had, and this is the board game passion. I like a lot of board games, and for a lot of people, the knowledge of the board games is limited. Basically, many people think about board games thinking about Risk, Monopoly, and other games that we played when we was kids. However, there is a much more broader universe behind it, made up of more recent board games. In the last 20 years, many new games are published. So, every episode is carried out also with the support of several guests. And this is a special episode because it's the last episode of the second season. So, to celebrate, it was absolutely necessary to invite a huge guest to end with a flourish. Scientific popularizer, YouTuber, writer with a deep knowledge of everything related to astronomy. Adrian FARTADE, please come on stage, Adrian.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. How are you?
Pleasure to meet you. Okay. Well, I'm on Earth, so it's better than on Mars for now.
I briefly introduced you, but please describe who you are, what you do.
Okay, so I'm a theater actor. I work as an entertainer. You can find me on YouTube, and I usually speak about history, the history of science, and how we discovered what we know about the universe, about ourselves, and what we as a species are doing to further ourselves and life itself in the universe here around us in this small angle of the galaxy.
Okay, now that we know that Adrian is here, you can think easily why I choose Adrian to satisfy my curiosity about a topic that involves basically three themes: science, science fiction, and board games too. The theme is terraforming Mars. Adrian, I leave the floor to you. Let us explain the concept of terraforming.
Sure. I'll do it with a single image. Like, you all know what Earth is like, okay? Imagine Mars as Earth. What's missing? Water, okay? So, for one. Then, an atmosphere. Exactly. Like, you don't want to exchange those in the wrong order, because if you have water but no atmosphere, it would just freeze or boil away. So you need an atmosphere before you can have water. After that, of course, in what order? Because if you have an atmosphere, then you can have water. If you have water and an atmosphere, but you don't have a protection from solar wind, the solar wind will eventually blow away the atmosphere, and then you don't have any water and kaput. So the order should be magnetosphere, atmosphere, and then water. After that, life could help, yeah. In what order? Well, usually at the end. So that's in a nutshell what terraforming is. How can we transform taking Mars as it is and making it similar to Earth. And how can we do this on a planetary scale? Now, terraforming is not only about other places in the solar system. We need to learn how to terraform places because we are already doing it, just not willingly and in the wrong way. We're Marsiforming Earth in this period. So, well, like we're trying to change that during this century, but even if we do, if we change our way in how we interact with our climate here on Earth, things are not going to get very well in the far future. Like we have ice ages. Climate on Earth will change drastically. And if we, as a species, want to continue to live on Earth with Earth as it is, we'll have to change the climate during the next tens of thousands of years. So terraforming places is a skill that species need to live on places for long periods of time. The other solution is humans will just have to adapt, like we did during the last ice ages. Humans already survived 3 or 4 ice ages, so we could do that, probably without big cities, and probably a big portion of humans will die, but yeah, we could do that. But whatever strategy we adopt, we need to learn how to interact with our planet on a planetary scale. And that translates to terraforming places. When we're going to go to Mars, we'll have to decide what and how we want to do it. Because when we go in millions and millions of people on Mars, we will change Mars. So the thing we have to choose is, will we do it in a conscious way, knowing what we are doing, or will we do it exactly doing what we did on Earth, just going around and doing things and just worrying about it far into the future? Because here on Earth, it didn't work well. So it's better that we understand how climate works, how we interact with Mars, and figure out now what we want to do in the future. Because I know that everyone here thinks like, yeah, terraforming Mars, but like it's something that people will have to do like so far in the future that it does not in any way regard us. But it does. It's about us, because we are the ones that will go there to start our colonies, not really colonies, which we'll see about that, but we're the ones who will set the framework on how we're going to live on Mars. And later generations will have to figure out how to deal with our choices. And if we want to see something concrete, as an example, watch Europe, a map of Europe, and watch the borders. Those borders were set there from conflicts from centuries ago. All the problems we now have with borders across the world, or like in Middle East, it's the same thing. It's colonialism. So decisions that humans made a century ago have completely altered how we interact with our world today. That's the place where we are today. What decisions we take about Mars today will change everything for the humans that we're going to send there to live in the next century.
So, thanks, Adrian. So you should know that about this theme, a board game was developed in the last years. In 2016, a family-run publishing house, unknown to most at the time, named Frixelius Games, launched this game, Terraforming Mars. The success of this game was extraordinary. In addition to all millions copies sold around the world, several crowdfunding campaigns have been carried out. For example, the last one have reached $2.7 billion. So, for those unfamiliar with the board game market, in the recent years, many board games have reached a huge success, but anyway, the market is small. Not so many are the games that reach this kind of success. So, Adrian, have you ever played Terraforming Mars?
Well, not that much, but a few times, yes.
Okay, I come here because I have a copy of the game. So I want to show something on this board game. And I want to make an overview of this game. So put the camera on, okay? And this is an Italian copy localized by Genos Games. You can find it on Amazon, on something physical store. The game is based on a concept that in the future, the world government for some companies to colonize Mars. You can play one of these companies called corporation. For example, I take this. And my mission is to colonize Mars faster than the other. So, in terraforming Mars, basically you could change 3 elements. Level oxygen, the temperature of the planet, and the water present on the planet. So, doing these activities, players will receive some reward. This reward is victory points that you can track on this track. At the end of the game, the player with most points is the winner. Also, you should know that the game is based on rounds. And in each round, you can play these cards. These cards are called projects. So, for example, you can found a city or do something else to create your project on the planet. And also, you can change the parameters of the planet and place some of these hexagon tiles. So, with going on of the game, the planet will be more and more colonized and seems more and more alive. Other things you should know. When at the end of the round, players want or can't do anything else, players produces resources. At the start, you have a small amount of resources, and during the next round, you will have more and more resources to spend to do something more and more bigger. Other things you could do are, for example, standard projects. So basically, you can create an electric power plant to increase your electric production. Or for example, you can throw an asteroid on the planet and change the temperature of Mars. Ending the overview, you can also do a milestone. Is an achievement you can reach placing one of your cubes, a green one, for example, when you reach some condition. Or you can found some prizes and award, and at the end of the game, the player that is the most deserving player at a specific field at the end of the game win a prize in points. So now you had an overview on the board game, and you can easily think that the board game is strictly connected to the setting of Terraforming Mars. You should keep in mind that board games authors don't have always support of an expert like Adrian to doing this kind of board game. So the accuracy is not 100%. And anyway, sometimes something is changed for adding some science fiction and do something that can be as cool as possible. By the way, Adrian, it's your time.
Yes.
A question easily arises. What is science fiction And what is science in this game, Terraforming Mars?
Well, the science part is that Mars really exists, so that's real. And no, there are a few science nuggets here, and they are pretty interesting. The science fiction part is that almost all of the technologies we are using to terraform Mars are borrowed from our imagination about how we transformed our planet during the last century. So we usually think about what we're going to do on Mars, taking example from what we already did on Earth. And it's not really going to go like that, because imagine how, or for example, look back on how people used to think that the year 2000 was going to be. Like flying cars, usually flying cars. The reason why we don't have flying cars is because people are driving them. And you don't want people driving things that fly. We are too much optimistic in 2 dimensions. We don't want a third dimensions, for instance. So if people are going to start driving automated machines, like cars that can drive themselves, then, well, you could see driving vehicles that can fly, maybe. But the basic point about Mars is that when we think about science fiction, we use things from our past. During the late 800s and the start of the last century, when people were thinking about robots, they were always thinking about huge robots with steam, because that was the technology from that age. When you look at robots imagined during the 50s and 70s, they were full of electricity. That was the type of robot that they were imagining with all that technology. When we are thinking of robots, we're imagining them as synthetic, with biology, right? So, because it's our technology. So when we're thinking about how we're going to terraform Mars, we can only use technology from our past as an example. But everything about how we're going to terraform Mars is very, very probably wrong. Not because we didn't think about it enough, or it's simply because when people are really going to terraform Mars, they'll have technology that we can now only dream about. So we have no idea how technology is going to change during the next few decades, and how that will translate in technologies used to terraform Mars. But this is a nice example to start thinking about the next steps to go in that direction.
Okay, so we think about that can be interesting to start from cards and action in the game to discuss about the terraformation from the point of the game and in real life. So if you can share some image and
sure. Let's start very easy. In the game, there are hundreds of cards. I've selected a few divided in 3 types. Like the first type of card we're going to explore they're about life. So we're going to talk about life because it's almost dinner time, and so I want to capture your attention until you still have a bit of attention left. So let's start with life. Greenhouses. Greenhouses are going to be extremely important because humans tend to want to eat. And food is very difficult to come by on Mars. So we can take food with us, but it's difficult to take enough food for long stays on Mars.
So we can call the Deliveroo on Mars.
No, you can't. But there's another point about greenhouses that it's never talked about. Taking care of a greenhouse can have a great psychological effect on people. So astronauts living on Mars that can take care of a greenhouse could be happier. Like if you want to imagine, you're from a space agency here on Earth. Okay, so your job is to take care of your human. He's our human, and we don't want him to die. Or well,
so.
not immediately. So let's see how he does on Mars. But if we want to take him on Mars, and we want him to be happy, probably he'll be happier in a place with green stuff and plants and things that can he can see and think about Earth instead of an office, right? Well, it depends. Would you be happier in an office?
Maybe.
Wrong example. Imagine a real human being. Okay, another example is industrial microbes. Why do the work when microbes could do it for us, right? The idea is that we can take microbes, give them a job, and they can do it better than us. And we have already done this. Like, do you remember an Italian astronaut called Luca Parmitano? When he went to the space station during his last mission, one of the experiments he did was to take a few microbes, special microbes, and leave them on a small piece of meteorite that we took to simulate meteorites we could find in space, in outer space. And those microbes started to eat metals inside the meteorite, leaving small deposits of poop that are perfect for us because they already extracted exactly what types of minerals we needed that are bonded together in other molecules inside the rocks. So they are tearing apart minerals, extracting only the metals we need. So if you do this on a huge industrial scale, you could produce metals that you could take then and 3D print almost anything you need. The cool part is that all these microbes are genetically modified to do what you want. So you can tinker with them. You can like modify a few genes and make them perfect for nickel or cobalt or lithium, whatever you need to extract from deposits on Mars or asteroids.
So this code is basically based on production of steel. So it's
yeah,
some kind of accuracy.
Exactly. Okay, so then there's the point about searching for life on Mars, and it's what we are now doing on Mars. There are a couple of big missions on Mars from NASA that are searching for life now, and there's another big rover that we as Europeans are preparing that should have been going to Mars already, but alas, there's a country in Europe that invaded another country, and well, shit happens. Then, well, there's this huge debate today about life on Mars because we have no idea if Mars ever had life. When life started on Earth, Earth had oceans, electricity in the atmosphere. It had volcanoes, active volcanoes under the surface of the ocean, and all the energy and minerals to mix things together to produce life. Mars and Venus had almost the exact same conditions. So we know from exploring Mars during the last decades that Mars had all the necessary conditions for life. We have no idea if life really started on Mars. That's our next objective. So if you're asking, okay, so what did we learn about life on Mars with all the missions we saw during our lifetime? That's what we learned, that Mars really had the conditions to have life. We have no idea if that was true when I was born in the 80s. Now we know for certain. Like we know of canyons full of deposits that were taken there from rivers. We know of extinct riverbeds and lakes. And we already found minerals that are created in contact with water that is pH neutral. And we found organic molecules on Mars, plus a type of nitrogen that only life can use. So we if we find life on Mars, that complicates everything, because if we want to terraform Mars, that could mean extinction for life on Mars. So what are we going to do? Destroy another life entirely on Mars? Like, the forms of life on Mars managed to survive on one of the most extreme places in the solar system for billions of years. And then humans arrive.
What could be wrong?
Well, they could find a way to kill us all. So there's that. Well, then we have Archaeobacters. Archaea are the most ancient type of bacteria on Earth. And they're fantastic at doing a lot of crazy things, like surviving in extreme temperatures, in acid. They can survive in uranium deposits. They can eat away almost anything, and they are found anywhere on Earth. And there are types of archaea that don't even need oxygen. Like, they're so ancient that when they were born, oxygen wasn't a thing. Like, cells were a new type of technology. So if you bring them to Mars in huge quantities, and we specialize them in photosynthesis, we could produce gas in the atmosphere that we need, like, for example, oxygen. But we do need to make that on a huge scale if we want to succeed. Okay, so then we have genetic repair. This is for, well, it's for us and life. Like, if we want to have greenhouses with things like onions, or, for example, fruit, or any other type of food that we want to eat, we don't yet know if life as we know it, and plants specifically, can survive the genetic destruction from radiation that they have to endure on Mars. If we have tools to genetically repair their DNA on Mars, that could be extremely helpful. If we manage to do that on a big scale, not only for plants, but for ourselves as well, we could imagine humans living there decades. Otherwise, there will come a point where a single human being, especially at the beginning, will find it, will like survive on Mars for a few years, and then we'll have to bring it home, because the chance of genetic problems and like cancer will be so high that povero Nicola has to come back. Okay, so last one, we have fungi. Now, fungi are extremely fascinating. They're not plants. For hundreds of years, we classified them as plants, but they're creatures that can move, that can communicate, that judge you in the dark. They watch and they judge how you dress. They're amazing. Like, they are waging this incredible war, like from hundreds of millions of years, against every other form of life. Fungi want to kill everyone except algae, because together, what can you produce with a fungus, and an algae? You can find them all over the city on like walls and monuments and trees. Lichens, lichen. That are a symbiotic organism between an algae and the fungus. And together, like, the fungus produces the minerals, takes minerals up that the algae can't, and the algae produces energy with sunlight, because it can do photosynthesis, and the fungus can't. So that's the only way it can interact. Every other thing fungi want to kill. Every other, including ourselves. If you have a fungi in your body, it wants to kill you. So the next time you see a small champignon, you know what it's thinking about. But if we take them on Mars, there are species of fungi that can survive in extreme conditions, and that could alter rocks and do something like lichens here. So we could imagine using them as a weapon to terraform Mars in the future.
I never think about terraforming Mars like a game of zombie.
Well, yeah, it's almost
It's like a variant of Zombicide for who knows the board games. It's interesting. So
yeah. So that was the part about life. This is the part about technology. So let's start with the fun stuff. Star Wars. Will we have a war between Mars colonies and Earth? Well, it depends on what kind of relationships we establish. First of all, we will never have colonies on Mars because they are prohibited, because we established a treaty, an international treaty that explicitly prohibits every government or person from having a territory on other places in the solar system. So there is no way Italy can go on Mars and say, okay, this land is New Venetia, Venice, sorry, or Neo Venezia. Sounds wonderful. We could build canals with water, beautiful. And so, but there's no way to do that. So it will be similar to the Antarctic Treaty. In Antarctica, no one can have property. So that's the framework for the future. Now, where does the problem arise? When humans living on Mars will start building their own governments. They will have their laws, their ideas of the future of Mars, etc. When usually, every time we think about the future of colonies on Mars, we think that we are going to be in charge. Like we know that, like on a profound level, we know that if there's going to be a city on Mars, it's going to be a human city, right? And if there are humans, it's our species. So we are the ones having a colony on there. No, they are, yes, humans, but they're living on Mars, and they will probably will want to have an independent government from ourselves. So there will come a point where they will make a decision that's different from what we want. At that point, we could have a conflict. Is it practical to have a war between planets? Well, the short answer is no. But on the other side, we have a long story of impractical wars we did here on Earth, like a lot of them. So who knows? If we want to wage war against Martians, we need to think about war in a very different way. And you guys working in cybersecurity and data management, you'll be on the front line, because one of the most important things for conquering those pesky Martians and their beautiful, beautiful red planet will be finding out where the fleet is heading and when it's coming, because we know that when the planets are aligning, we know that if they want to attack or if we want to attack, that the perfect moment is only once every 2.5 years. So we know when we're going and when they're coming, but we don't have any idea where they will going to be, because space is huge. So we can't just go there and look around. So that's how wars will be fought in the future, and it's already going on, because in the war in Ukraine now, satellites are being attacked by Russians. Western satellites, for example, Starlink satellites from SpaceX, are attacked daily by the Russian government. So that's an example of wars fought in space. And right now, we don't really understand, like in our everyday life, how much our nations depend on our space infrastructure for everything: communication, management of huge territories, and data. and global positioning system. Even if you want to take money from a bank, you need GPS. You need a satellite. And like there are nations that have ways to take out all the satellites from another nation. Imagine something like that. But there's not only like physical making them explode. Hackers can take control of a satellite. They can eavesdrop and they can find out what's the exact position of all your assets in your nation. Or, for example, if you want to send a missile during an attack, they can change. Like you have a drone, and you send the command to the drone telling it, okay, kill that group of people. And the drone heads that way, and it communicates with the satellite. And another nation enters this communication and changes the coordinates just slightly. So it misses. You don't know what happened, and you just say, dang it, it's missed again. That's already happening. So that thing could happen on a solar scale. Interplanetary internet will be the future. We already are starting to build it. So this card is fairly possible. I mean, we have no idea how wars will really going to be in the future, but wars will happen in the future because humans tend to take war with them everywhere. Okay, then we have migrants. Because of course we do. Because if you want to have something done, you need migrants. And I'm saying this as a migrant in Italy.
So we don't have native Martians.
No, everyone is going to be an immigrant there. So that's the fun part. Until a few generations after, they're going to start to say, but you're not a real Martian like me. Yeah. It's like if you go to or here in the north of Italy, a lot of people have parents or grandparents that are from the south, and you can still find people that their grandparents were immigrants, and they're like the super racist, and you're just, how is that possible? So yeah, like a city of immigrants on Mars is just a city, because every city is going to be a city of immigrants. But we will have to establish laws on how we're going to manage immigration on Mars. Not just we, but the Martians too. So when you're thinking about the future of colonization on Mars, for example, remember that our choices are only our choices. They're not Martians' choices. And it's strange to start to think about Martians in that way, but it helps to think about political relationships. Because if we want to say, okay, so we're sending, whoever wants to go on Mars can go on Mars. What happens when Martians say, well, no, we won't accept anyone. We just want these types of people. What are we going to do? So people here could start to say, well, wait a minute. How are they now allowed to say who wants or gets to go on Mars or not for an entire new planet? What if I want to go on Mars? That's the exact debate we had during colonial era in Africa and in North America. A lot of people from Europe wanted to build new cities around the colonies, and there was a huge debate between nations on who owned territories in the New World. So you can imagine a war fought between nations here on Earth for who gets to go on Mars to establish a new city, and the rights between nations. And like Martians could at a certain point be like, okay, no more humans. Sort your shit off, do your thing, fight your wars, we don't care. No more humans from Earth, we're done. No more Earthlings. And what happens then? We have an example with China. China used to sell tea to the British Empire. And then at a point, they said, well, we're not going to sell you anything anymore. The British Empire waged 2 wars against China to force them to sell. The same thing was done with Japan. Japan closed itself from the world. It said they don't want it to trade with anyone in the world, and they had to because there was a series of wars, and basically the Americans and the Europeans came there with huge fleets and said, "You see these are bombs. You see those are your cities. You don't want to make them meet." Now, Celestials. So you can imagine a future where humans from Earth go to humans from Mars and say, "You have to let us come and build cities, otherwise we'll destroy all of you." I'm not really depicting humans from Earth like in a sympathetic way, but we are complicated as a species. Now, this is for tourism. It's for Miranda, another place of the solar system, but it's fun anyway, so I'm going to mention it. We could have tourism, huge tourism on Mars. Like most of people, maybe they don't want to live on Mars, but just go there on vacation, say, "Hi, Mom," and then come back home. So most of people could just go on vacation on Mars. That could easily be one of the engines for economic growth for Mars. For example, tourism. So in that scenario, if you want tourists to come to Mars, you don't want a huge interplanetary conflict. So that could be one of the cards that humans on Earth play against humans on Mars. Like, for example, they could say, "Okay, no more tourists. What about that?" Huh? So it's going to be interesting to see how every colony, so different places in the solar system will try to be independent from each other to manage to not interact in a submissive way with other governments. And the same thing could happen on other places. So imagine like the year 10,000. And humans are all over the place in the solar system. You won't have humans as our idea of humans on Earth, like one species. You'll have Martians, Earthlings, Jovians, etc. Because every single planet will start building its own self-identity, disconnected from us. Like communications from Earth to Mars are at least 15 minutes. One direction and then 15 minutes back. So half an hour just to say hi. It's really far away. And if you want to go there and enforce law from here as a colony, you'll need 2.5 years just to go there. So it's impractical. So every place in the solar system where humans are going will become a self-sustaining single place with their own identity and their story, etc. So we won't have humans in the solar system in the same way we think about nations. Because on Earth, you can go with an airplane from here to the other side of the planet like in less than 1 day. In the solar system, that won't be possible. So every single place will have its own identity. And you can imagine tourism all over the place, but even wars fought between planets, and we will have to choose who we want on our side, etc. It's going to be really complicated.
So basically, I have I see two problems. I can call my mom.
Yes.
For communication time, and maybe it's a problem if I want to go even 1 or 2 days on Mars for vacation.
You can't go like 1 or 2 days. The fastest way to do a vacation on Mars is to go with a mission that, like, imagine you're Mars, okay? So Earth is here. We align just once every 2.5 years. If I miss this chance, I can't go back. So, like, you're over there and you're coming in this direction and you're going over that. So when you're on that pace, I'm heading in your direction, because in the meantime you're moving.
Okay.
So we're going to meet here. Now, when we meet here, I have 2 spaceships that separate. One goes on the surface. The other spaceship goes around like this, and then comes back like this. Okay? So in the meantime, I go on the surface, do my thing, say hi, and then blast off for the surface of Mars, reunite with the spaceship that just then goes around and comes back to Earth. That's possible, and you can do a round trip in something like a year and a half with a 30 days, a month stop on Mars.
Okay.
That's the fastest way to have a vacation on Mars.
But they need
if you
more
miss,
than 2 years to come and more than 2 years to get back.
well, no. So if you go, you need 6 to 7 months
Okay.
to get there, and 6 to 7 months to go back.
Okay.
So a year and a few months. Now, if you miss the chance and you don't get to your spaceship, you have to wait 2.5 years to have another chance to go to Earth.
Okay.
So it really, really, really helps to be punctual.
For me,
Okay,
it's a
so-
problem anyway.
Last few cards. This is about the territory, but we already talked about colonies, and this is about prisons. Now, prisons. Australia. Australia was born like when we discovered Australia. We Europeans used it as a huge prison because we went there and we saw that everything around wants to kill you, from kangaroos to spiders to cute snakes, sharks, everything. The sun, everything. Even plants want to kill you. Like most of poisonous plants on Earth are all in Australia. So we decided that that's the place we're going to send all the prisoners from Europe. And all those people that went there just started building their own cities. And now it's Australia like we know it. So that's where Hugh Jackman comes. And we don't know if we will have prisons on Mars now, or on, this is Callisto, a moon of Jupiter. But here's the thing. Again, we are projecting our ideas of how we deal with criminality into the far future. Prisons were born during the 1800s, after Napoleon. The modern idea of prisons. Did have prisons before, but there were not centers for re-education like we say they are now. Like, for example, in our idea of prison, someone who committed a crime has to get out, right? That's the objective. Not illegally, but if that person does not manage to be reinserted in society, something went wrong. Now, you could imagine a future where things could be done very differently, and like criminality could be dealt with without prisons in a different humane way that really works better. Like we just invented, at a certain point, we invented prisons because it was very, very easy to just take the person that had a problem and just tell him, you stay here, you don't interact with us, and ta-da, we dealt with the problem. The problem is that you don't deal really with the problem, because our basic idea was that if you're a criminal, it's because of something that only depends from you. But we discovered that it's not like that. Like people do criminal stuff, one, because the laws can change a lot, and like the laws establishes what is a crime and what isn't. Like, so things we now do, women can dress in trousers and it's not a crime. A century and a half ago, it would have been a crime. So that's one way. The other thing is that our culture can change that. So people that live in extreme poverty can do things that for us are criminal, but it's not like in that context they have a choice. But we still punish them, even if they don't have a choice. So it's really, really complicated to imagine how prisons will be in the future. And I can only hope that in the future we won't use planetary bodies in the solar system as prisons. Like, at least this, I can hope we can learn to do better. Because if you take the most advanced computers we have, even the most advanced ones are not even by far as incredible, complex, and beautiful as a human being. So from a research use perspective, because you work in data management and resources, right? So if you can imagine using the best of our resources, taking a human being capable of doing poetry, art, mathematics, inventing things, and just living closed in a prison is a waste of resources, right? So if you can't find what didn't work in his story and repair it and make him work in the society, it's a huge loss for everyone. So having prisons at this in this moment of our history, it's a waste. So I hope that in the future we won't have this card because we won't need prisons. Okay, so last of them are capitals and natural reserves. These are for how we will use our territory on Mars. Like, for example, capital cities were born during an age where you had governments that had to be nearby because of horses. You had to have all the people governing a nation at walking distance so they could find each other and talk about the problems, because that was the fastest way. There is no practical need for a capital city today, but we still have them for tradition. Like it's fun to say that every country has its capital, but there's no real reason why you can't just have an important city. Like there are a lot of countries that have their capital that isn't even the most important cultural city. For example, take Turkey and Istanbul and Ankara. Ankara is the center of the government, but Istanbul is far more important culturally, economically, etc. So, or for example, there are debates about, I'm not going to enter a debate about Milan and Rome. I'm just going to say that for me, we should choose Florence because I lived in Florence, it's beautiful, and we have better food. Okay, so natural reserves. This is fun because one of the cool things about the future is that about terraforming Mars, it's not granted that we, or the humans living there, are going to choose to terraform all Mars. Like you could imagine that, for example, we could only terraform bits of it. We can take a crater, shield it, and I think I have a card about that. Like it's something like that. You could terraform just this part and leave all the rest of Mars pristine. And you can imagine that the rest of Mars would be a natural reserve or a place like the Grand Canyon on Earth. Like, so there's no need for us to just want to change all the planet. So just to walk in without a space suit around Mars. Like we couldn't do that on a local scale. A small crater on Mars, a relatively small crater, just one that you could see as a few pixels in a global image of Mars, could be like 80 kilometers. That's twice the size of Milan. So you could have a huge city for millions of people living inside a place that is terraformed. That could be a faster way to terraform Mars without the need to really terraform all Mars. Plus, for tourism, it could be far better because people coming from Earth would want to visit real Mars, like it was before us. Plus, it would be far better if we find life on Mars. That way, you could live with the real Martians that already are there. So that could be a solution.
I watched an interview of Elon Musk. I think you know Elon Musk, that is talking about this theme, and it says that what what we've seen here is before, and it's a more approachable solution. But later, the dream is to remove this.
But again, it's a dream by a person living in the 21st century on Earth. And people on Mars living in the next century are going to say, Elon, who? Like, okay,
Of course.
cool, man. Okay, but you're an Earthling. You're not a Martian. Like, it's not up to you to decide what we do with our planet. And that's the cool thing to think about. We are not the ones that are going to decide the future of Mars. We're just the ones that are going to enable human beings to live on their own planet, and they are the ones who are going to decide about their future. If they screw up, we are going to be like parents watching kids do terrible decisions and like watching them and say, like, we've already been there. I know you're now at your age convinced that doing interplanetary war is cool and all. It's not. We've been there, trust me. But kids, well, you know how they are. So when humans are going to live on Mars, I think that the decision to terraform Mars is going to be up to them. So whatever we say now, this isn't going to really matter in a couple of generations. Now, transport is going to be extremely important. So Trenitalia has a future on Mars. So you could end up 2.5 years late. So no, but trains are an excellent way to go around Mars because you could have transport modes from all across Mars in a very rapid way. But the other solution would be using, like, the great way to do things on Mars is to use the dense, very rarefied atmosphere from Mars. Like, the advantage is that if you don't terraform all Mars, if you terraform only where you live in the cities, then the atmosphere on Mars remains 1% of that from Earth, right? So if you use a train outside of your city, it would have so very little attrito, it's friction with the air, right? So it could travel far better and faster with less energy. So it would be far more efficient to have a Martian atmosphere outside of Earth colony for transport. Okay, so this is the space elevator. This is extremely cool. In principle, you can do it. You can build a huge elevator that goes all the way up to space. And we know how to do it on paper. We don't have the materials to really do something like this. And then it gets really complicated because if you make a space elevator of those proportions, you need to clean it, you need to repair it, and that's extremely complicated. Like, think about structures here on Earth. We are now in a building that is how many stories tall? 20.
Yeah.
So imagine if it was 20 million stories. How do you even go up there? Like, if you go too fast, you'll end up dead. If you go too slow, you'll end up dead. So it gets complicated really fast. So it's on paper, it's cool. It's not that practical
This is like in Foundation, Isaac Asimov.
Yeah.
I think that
Asimov
is
had
a clear example of science fiction in this.
Exactly. Things that look cool in science fiction until you don't think about them too much. Like, who's going to clean? What if something breaks? Like, this structure
and if it breaks a half like in Foundation, it's a problem.
Yeah, but even if it doesn't break, like if something breaks and
Sorry for
people
spoiler.
remain in the middle, how are you going to take them down? So you need a lot of infrastructure around something like this. So one of the last things is pulviscolo, that's dust. Mars is very dusty, and you could use basaltic dust from Mars to cover the ice on South and North Pole to make it warmer so that it expands in the atmosphere and you could have an atmosphere. Like, this is a photo. Where is it? Okay. This is a photo of the South Pole of Mars. It really looks like tiramisu, I know, but it's Mars. So if you cover all of this with dark sand, you could make it hotter, just like when you, during the summer, wear something dark and it's hotter. And in principle, it could work. The downside of that is that, again, of course, you can build an atmosphere, but you need a magnetic field. How can you build a magnetic field? Well, we have no practical idea. We have some sci-fi ideas, like we could build huge structures or a ring around Mars, electrifying it, and building a protection for the planet. But that type of technology doesn't yet exist. And even if it does exist, the other problem is money. Like, we know how to get to the moon. We have the technology to get to the moon. Like, we had technology to get to the moon for half a century. So why is there no city on the moon? Money. So that's the problem with sci-fi. Even if something is technically possible, it doesn't mean that it will get done, because you still need to use a lot of money. And people could just say, well, why build something so huge and expensive around Mars to change Mars if we can just live on Mars as it is, right? So, because even if you protect yourself from radiation, the other side of the problem is that you have a third of the gravity on Earth, and we have no idea how damaging it is to our muscle and bones. So, even if you don't have the problem from radiation, you could still have huge physical problems. So, at that point, what's the point, right? Even if you change Mars so much to make it livable for humans, it could still be not enough. So maybe humans in the future on Mars will decide to let Mars as it is. Bonus, if you choose to do that, is that ice here has deposited for tens of millions of years. If you go here and drill down below and extract ice, you have like the Library of Alexandria in information about the solar system, because all this ice has bubbles inside, and all those bubbles are filled with atmosphere, the exact atmosphere that Mars had in the far past. So imagine the things we could learn, but not only for Mars, because you could compare what happened on Mars and what happened in the exact moment on Earth, for example, or on the Moon and on Venus. And when you start to compare, you'll see moments when, like, all these planets had a huge spike in maybe deposits of uranium. And then you discover that all the solar system at one point, 1.5 million years ago, was blasted from radiation from a supernova. That's really cool to discover, right? So you could then find that on Earth, in that moment, there was an extinction. And maybe that extinction was due to the blast from the supernova blasting away our ozone layer temporarily until it formed again. And when it did that, a lot of species of life on Earth went extinct. So that's an example of things we can learn from these deposits. They just are huge library from the past of the Mars. Now, we could just erase all of it, but I think you do agree that it could be a bit of a shame. So I think humans are really able to do more than just transform everything to adapt, to change the world from how they are. Like, if you go on Earth and watch cultures adapting in different environments, they didn't always change the world around them. Like, people living in the Sahara Desert and people living in Alaska found different ways to live in their environment, in symbiosis with their environment. And I think humans living on other planets in the solar system could do the same. We don't have to go on Mars and transform it to Earth. We can go on Mars and live on Mars. It would be so much cooler, right? So the dream of terraforming could be extremely beautiful as a dream of the 21st century people that were projected to go on Mars and then just make Earth 2.0. But the real thing that humans will learn once they get there is that you don't need to replicate everything good. Mars is already beautiful. You already have everything you need there. What you really want to do is live in symbiosis with your habitat. Things that will change our way of thinking about planets. And maybe at that point, just to close the circle and come back around, when we will start to see our world changing, maybe we won't like transform the world just to make it stay put as we want it, but we will learn to adapt to live in a changing environment, to adapt to be in symbiosis with our world, with our ecosystem, and be like integral part of our world. That doesn't mean we have to go back to in the past with our technologies and like live like we used to in the past. No. I'm talking about incredibly advanced technology. But we do need technology that is far, far in the future to be able to live in a more sustainable way and transform Earth in a park for life, not in a place that we destroy just to manage to live like we want to. Like, imagine not a dystopia, imagine something like, instead of cyberpunk, there's a huge trend in science fiction today called solarpunk. And solarpunk is the use of technology to make a future that is brighter, that's nicer, that's filled with life and parks and ecosystems, and it's where people can live in a way that is far more truer to our nature as animals, and not just like we are doing today, like forcing ourselves to live in a way that's really not exactly pleasant for us or natural for us as a species. So that's my takeaway from a game like Terraforming Mars. And I really think that thinking about terraformation could help us learn more about ourselves and what is our relationship with other planets, including Earth.
So thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
I think that it's time for a little moment of Q&A. So I come here to read some questions.
Sure. Oh, yeah, okay.
And of course,
just a second.
We've done some game with the audience that is here. All of you have a card. So maybe if someone have a card that thinks that is really interesting, Adrian will try to talk about that card. So who wants to give a card to Adrian? So come on, don't be shy. But anyway, come here.
Okay, so while you choose the card, I have a small surprise just for you that are present here, not for you at home. So sorry. This is a fragment, small fragment from Mars. So I'm going to give it to you. You can watch, you can touch it if you want. It's a 3.6 billion years old fragment of a Martian meteorite that comes from lava field from Mars. And when it's not red because when it formed, Mars was filled with lakes and rivers and it rained, etc. Okay.
Adrian, you can watch Research on Mars.
Research on Mars. So you can imagine students going on Mars to make their stay there and like their PhD. So you can imagine universities sending astronauts with students on Mars. And one fun thing about research is that if you research something on Mars to help people on Mars, it could find something that's useful for us here on Earth. When we do research on the International Space Station, we tend to find a lot of things that are useful for space technologies, but really useful for ourselves here on Earth. Like one time we found something, we were doing research on how to make explosions in space. It's a really fun topic. You don't want space stations to be flammable, right? It's not a good idea to have space stations on fire. So we did all these experiments, taking pieces of materials that are present on the space station and letting them burn and watching them burn in space. And one discovery we made is that there are a few ways in which flames develop in different types that are not ever seen on Earth. So we saw flames that you can never see in gravity on Earth. And the interesting thing about that is that we learned how to make combustion far more efficient in engines here on Earth, burning less of fuel with fewer escape gases. So we made engines better and less environmentally damaging with a discovery made in space, while we were searching how to not end up in a fire on the space station. So research is cool.
Okay, we have some question from
Okay.
the people who was watching this show in streaming.
Tell me.
And one of these says, but it's possible to put a middle base between Mars and Earth?
Well, there is no place in the middle between Mars and Earth because they're orbiting around the sun, so it's not exactly in a middle place, but you could have asteroids placed in special places. So it could be useful to have comets and asteroids that you can visit with your spaceship and use them as fuel deposits. So, like, for example, you could have the space station that arrives there, it uses the fuel over there, so it doesn't have to fuel all the way back from Earth, and then just travels all the way back to Mars. The most useful thing about that would be when you want to build in space. Like, resources in space are usually what we think about for taking the resources back here on Earth, right? If you find gold or precious metals or titanium or lithium on Mars, we could use those resources back here on Earth. But that's not the best way to start, because imagine in the late 19th century, during the rush for gold in California, if you were in California and found a piece of gold nugget, the price to taking that nugget all the way to New York to sell it would be huge. So it wasn't worth it. And we're in the exact same position now. Like, resources on Moon or Mars or asteroids are not worth taking back to Earth. They would cost far too much. So the clever thing would be to build an infrastructure for something else, like taking humans, for example. So if governments want to make cities possible on Mars, and you have fuel deposits and spaceships going all the way up and down from Earth to Mars, at that point, it's the equivalent of having the transport railway that the United States government built from one coast to another in the late 19th century, early 20th century in the United States. At that point, if you have a gold nugget on Mars, you could just send it with the next spaceship going to Earth, because there's always some spaceship going to Earth. And that's when things really change. At that point, the cost of sending things to Earth would be drastically lower, because you're not sending only the resources. At that point, you could have an interplanetary economy. So in this moment, we're building the infrastructure that you need, like the railways, to make resource utilization from a planet to another possible. It takes time, but it's worth it.
Okay, another question is, basically, we have technology to do cool stuff. even terraformation on Mars, maybe in the future.
Yeah, or
But we have
nuclear war.
always the problem of money. I know
Yeah.
it's a philosophic question, but
Yeah.
how could go and resolve this problem? Do not think about money, maybe like in the game, of course, that is a race to.
Exactly. Well, the game is a race to make more money. So,
Okay.
Well, the problem here mainly is capitalism. And like, I know that when I say that, people are like, but it really is. Now, that doesn't mean that if something is wrong with capitalism, well, the answer is, well, build a communist future state on Mars because it's already red, so it's perfect. Could be fun. I don't know what the answer is, but seeing that capitalism has big problems doesn't mean that you're communist. It just means that it objectively does, because capitalism, as we know it, was built during the Industrial Revolution almost 150 years ago. It's not something we built now, and it was never built to try to make people happy. It's not the point. It's to concentrate wealth in fewer and fewer hands. The trickle-down effect that everyone loves to mention, that if you have rich people, like everyone on the base would be rich, is simply not true. Like, it's not something that could be debated. No, we know for certain, time and time again, that it doesn't happen. So the real problem with the future of going around the solar system and building all this amazing stuff, it's what we want to do with our resources of time, creativity, and our capacity as human beings, because it's that we are really selling attention, creativity, and time, right? It's not about money. Money is a way to translate time and creativity in something that we can exchange. But what you are selling every day, going to work, is time and your brain and muscles, but usually brain. So in the future, if we can find a better way of doing things that doesn't concentrate so much wealth in so few hands, you could have so much more exploration and endeavors of humankind, because it's difficult to have human level explorations like all humankind if humankind doesn't really equate to something concrete. Like you just have billionaires, and you don't have like billionaires. No, you have people that have hundreds of billions of dollars, more than the GDP of a lot of countries. It's insane. So if we don't solve problems that we have with capitalism now, we're not going to do anything awesome in the far future in the solar system. We just won't. So it's not the first time we encounter problems like this. Like when you have the Gilded Age, at the end of the 18th century, 19th century, you had people far richer than today that were building the first railways in the United States, that were using the first deposits of carbon and petrol. Those were the first huge billionaires of the modern era. And at the point we said, okay, so what if we use part of your taxes to better the life of everyone? And we had we traveled to the moon. We went to the moon with 4% of the GDP of the United States. And in 12 years, we went to the moon. 12 years from the first satellite, humans on the moon. Like 4%. Like just to make that, take it into perspective. It's so crazy that all the nations in Europe, all the money we're taking and using for space, for infrastructure like a fundamental infrastructure for meteorological predictions and satellites to use for data and GPS and all those cool things, plus space exploration. All the nations have around 6 billion euros. Now, every summer, we Europeans spend around 15 billion euros on ice cream. It's more than double. It's almost 3 times. It's incredible. Like in the world, we spend on space and space exploration around, so not on everything around maybe 50 billion euros. Every year, we spend more than 180 billion years in perfumes to smell good. If we wanted to go to Mars, as much as we want to smell good, we would already have cities on Mars. So it's not like we don't want to go there or we don't have the money. We do. We already have all the resources. It's just that we are terrible in money management. And it's a concrete problem. Like we, as a species, when we started to have nails, we didn't use our fists, right? Because it hurts and it's stupid and it hurts. So we built a hammer, right? It's the exact thing we did with conceptual problems. When we started building our democracies, when we saw that if you have a democracy, one of the fragile things is that everyone wants the power concentrated in their own hands. Montesquieu, remember him? Nice guy, beautiful beard. I had an idea on how to solve the problem, dividing the powers between 3 different branches. We still have that today, and it works. Kind of, but it works. So we are excellent in finding solutions. We have huge problems in using money as a society. Like, for example, take hunger. We are producing far more food than we as a species eat. Like, we could feed everyone on the planet more than enough. Like, not enough, more than enough. And we don't. And like millions of people die, children die every year because of hunger, because we are terrible in managing our resources and wealth. And it's just stupid. It's just exactly like using your fist and to hit nails. It hurts. And we are at a point where if we don't find a solution for problems that are bigger than what everything we encountered up until this point, we will go extinct, because the damage we've done to climate is so terrible that if we don't act right now, we're dead. So yeah, on the bright side, if we change capitalism and the way we think about things, we change the human species forever and life itself. Like, we solve the problem with capitalism and we're building cities on Mars and no one dies of hunger. Right? It's awesome. That, like, it doesn't mean that just because during the last century people tried to find alternatives to capitalism and it didn't work, that doesn't mean we can't, right? Because people were trying to find a way to fly for hundreds of years. And it's like that, we just went, well, bummer, and didn't do anything. The Wright brothers found a way. We as a species do exactly that. We find a way. And if we now don't find a way, it's because not because we can't, it's because we didn't try. Because if we really, really try, we can absolutely find a better way of doing things, like with respect to climate and capitalism. We can do better than that. So I think that we can go to Mars, we can use money better, and we can build a world where no one dies of hunger.
But anyway, I can't say no to ice cream.
Well, we can have both. We should have both.
Thank you, Adrian, for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for your willingness, and I want to say something before say goodbye, because it's the last episode of this season. For sure, we will see in the future. You can follow my project and Adrian too on social. So before to say goodbye to you, I want thanks for sure Reply that have believed in this project from the beginning, and I want to thank especially Eduardo that is working with me and supports me for all my odd requests. And thanks to everyone who is part of the Green Player community. See you at the next season of On the Green. And smetto di parlare in inglese per un secondo per salutarvi come faccio sempre. Un saluto dal vostro giocatore verde preferito e da Adrian. Ciao. Alla prossima.
Continuate a essere meravigliosi. Dov'è Marte?